Polyp works here. So in chapter 1070, Vegapunk explains the whole copying process of devilfruits, and he explains that the only fruit that he cannot copy are those of the Logia type. I think I know why. So, when you have a paramecia fruit user, you are still studying a living person. You are studying the person, how they interact with the world. So, it's very easy to study a living subject because you can see where their DNA differs and where the devilfruit power lies. That lineage factor can be copied and put elsewhere. That is an understandable line of thinking. Same thing with a Zoan. Even those of the mythical type, even though he failed to perfectly replicate the fish fruit model Azure Dragon held by Kaido, he was still able to copy it 99.9% of the way there, because Kaido, as well as every other Zoan fruit user of any other subclass, is a living creature, whether it be someone like Luffy or someone like X Drake or someone like Lasso. These are all living beings. Living beings can be studied. So in that way, they're no different than a paramecia fruit user. You are studying a living being's DNA, a living being's lineage factor. So that's understandable. The reason why he can't replicate Logia powers is because you have a person who then becomes something non-living. And in some cases, the person becomes something incorporeal, because there's a stark difference between, say, a paramecia or a Zoan. They don't necessarily change. They're still humans. They're humans that it can take on different shapes and sizes and forms and interact with the world differently, but they're all still a human. Or I should say, in some rare cases, they're all still biological organisms. They all still have DNA. Logia physically are in a state of being human and not kind of all the time. It's very weird how the series writes them, because in some points they can be their element and sometimes they're not. But that means their powers are very reactive. So even when they become their element, you just have the element. And then that element doesn't have any DNA. It's simply sand. It's simply smoke. It's simply light. Or it's something as abstract as darkness. These things don't have DNA. And in terms of composition, there probably isn't anything different to them in compared to their normal, naturally occurring counterpart. Therefore, you really can't extract a lineage factor from something that doesn't really have one, if that makes sense. Because with a living creature, you can actually pinpoint what they are, and how they come to be. With light is just light. You can capture light. You can put it in something and hold it. You can capture sand. You can put sand in a bucket, but you can't break down the composition of sand, because there's nothing to differentiate sand generated from crocodile from the sand that's naturally occurring in a desert. There's nothing to gain from that. If you study crocodile himself, you would have the lineage factor, but then you really wouldn't be able to extract what exactly causes him to become sand, because unlike his other fruit counterparts, he actually becomes something totally different, something totally non-living that can't be studied. And that non-living thing is completely the same from its naturally occurring counterpart. That is why all Logias have no problem interacting with things that are of themselves, which is why I say Kizaru could just enter Egghead once it was locked down, because the dome is made of light and he is a light man. Or like how Crocodile could easily manipulate the sand around Alabasta by mixing it with his own sand. And then there are a lot of other special factors that I think are too varied and too unique from Logia to Logia that make things kind of difficult to study. For example, not only can Crocodile turn into sand, but then he can dehydrate living beings, suck the moisture out of them. Not only that, but all Logia have some sort of ability of levitation. How do you study that? You kind of see what I'm getting at here? But that's all I have for you today. Give me your thoughts.